Hello, listeners, and welcome back to Cobbs Corner. I'm your host, Morgan Cobbs, and today we're going to be reviewing Ant-Man. This is the last film in Phase 2, so closing out the second phase of the Infinity Saga. This is the film that introduced us to Dr. Hank Pym, played by Michael Douglas, his daughter Hope, played by Evangeline Lilly, and ex-convict Scott Lang, played by Paul Rudd, as they stage a heist to prevent dangerous technology from being released to the general public. Ant-Man is the first multi-generational legacy superhero in the MCU. Stay tuned. The film opens in 1989 at the Triskelion SHIELD headquarters in Washington, D.C., as it's still being constructed. We saw the fully constructed Triskelion in Captain America the Winter Soldier. An angry Dr. Hank Pym storms into a boardroom with an older Howard Stark, played by John Slattery, an older Peggy Carter, still played by Haley Atwell. They had aged Haley Atwell for this scene, and they de-aged Michael Douglas for this scene. And Shield head of defense Agent Carson, played by Martin Donovan, who they de-aged for this scene, and Martin Donovan Agent Carson shows up later on in the film. Dr. Pym is angry over the fact that Howard and the rest of the board stole his research and wants to use his shrinking particles, known as Pym particles, for their own personal agenda. As an intelligence organization, they want to use it for the SHIELD agenda. He even slams Agent Carson's face onto the table, breaking his nose after Carson brought up Hank's late wife, Janet. More on her later on. Pym resigns from his position at SHIELD, and his final words are, "As long as I am alive, no one will get that formula." And he storms out of the boardroom. We then get the typical Marvel title sequence, which is updated from like movie to movie. We then cut to the year 2015 as we see Scott Lang, a former electrical engineer in prison for robbing a corporation called Vista Corp for overcharging their customers, gets released from San Quentin prison after serving only 3 years of his 5-year sentence. This is all explained in Season 1 of the web series WHIH Newsfront, which I might cover in a future episode. He is picked up by his friend Louise, and he then struggles to find a stable job that will hire ex-convicts. After showing up to his daughter's birthday party and seeing his ex-wife as well as her fiance, who's actually a police officer, Lang realizes that he needs to, as his ex-wife put it, get an apartment, pay his child support, and get a stable job if he wants to be able to see his daughter Cassie. We then cut to Dr. Pym at a weapons demonstration by his former protege, Darren Cross, played by Corey Stoll, at Pym Technologies in San Francisco. This entire movie pretty much takes place in San Francisco. He sees that Cross has developed a suit called the Yellow Jacket, which uses the same shrinking technology that Hank used years ago as the Ant-Man, but then kept hidden from the rest of the world because it was dangerous. During his presentation of the Yellow Jacket, Cross even refers to the Ant-Man as, quote, Tales to Astonish, which was the comic book title in which Ant-Man made his first appearance in Tales to Astonish number 27 back in January of 1962. Hank realizes that Cross has gone mad and wants to sell the Yellow Jacket to different buyers and put it on the market for anyone to have, like literally anyone, both our allies and our enemies. Hank knows that he has to stop Cross, and he tells his daughter Hope that he knows someone who can help him. Back at Louise's apartment, Scott meets Dave, played by T.I., and Kurt, played by David Dastmalchian, as they go over a potential heist for all of them to participate in. They end up breaking into Hank Pym's mansion and stealing the Ant-Man suit, as Scott is using the suit for the first time at the apartment, back at their apartment. He shrinks and then ends up falling between the floors in his apartment building, getting caught inside of a vacuum cleaner. He even gets caught at the party that's happening a few floors down, and even landing on top of a car parked outside. Inside of the car, we see a cameo from Garrett Morris, who was the first on-screen actor to play Ant-Man during a 1979 Saturday Night Live sketch. Lang then returns the suit to Dr. Pym's house, and then on his way out, he is apprehended by San Francisco police. He even mentions, like, I'm not stealing something, I'm returning something I stole. Just Paul Rudd, just being Paul Rudd. After being brought to the jail, he is brought before Dr. Pym, who's posing as his lawyer. Dr. Pym explains to him that he's going to break Lang out of prison. Lang goes back to his cell, and the Ant-Man suit is brought to him in miniature form by tiny ants so that it won't be noticed by any of the guards. He gets into the suit, shrinks down, and escapes from the prison. He then wakes up in Dr. Pym's house, and he's greeted by Hope, Hank's daughter. Hank and Hope give Scott a rundown on the Ant-Man suit, how it works, how to communicate with the ants, etc. Hank explains that messing with the regulator on the suit could cause him to go subatomic, where he would enter a quantum realm where he would shrink forever and all concepts of time and space would become irrelevant. Everything and everyone that you love will be gone forever, is essentially what Hank tells Scott. Hank also explains how the continued use of the suit will take a toll on the user, so it's important that Scott wears the suit's protective helmet, otherwise the constant shrinking and expanding will alter the user's brain chemistry. That is exactly what happened to Darren Cross. The suit's helmet resembles Ultron, a nod to how Ultron was created by Hank Pym in the comics, where in the MCU he was created by Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. In our last film, Avengers Age of Ultron, in the comics it was Dr. Pym that created Ultron. Hank and Hope have a moment where Hank admits how his wife, Janet, died by going subatomic back in 1987 in order to stop an ICBM nuclear missile that was launched at the United States. The missile was made of titanium, which they could not cut through, so Janet went subatomic to save millions of lives. Three of them put together a plan to stop Darren Cross from releasing the Yellow Jacket to the market, and they need a signal decoy from what Hank thinks is an old Stark facility in upstate New York. Scott goes to retrieve the signal decoy and realizes that it's actually the new Avengers facility in upstate New York that we saw at the end of Avengers Age of Ultron. If you look closely, you can even see the burn marks that were left behind on the lawn when Thor left to go look for the Infinity Stones. He has an encounter with Falcon in which the two of them fight each other. This is Ant-Man's unofficial audition to join the Avengers. Scott escapes with the device, and upon returning to Hank's house with the device, Scott suggests bringing in his friends Louise, Dave, and Kurt to help with the heist. The six of them devise a plan to stop Darren Cross and blow up Pym Tech. Louise is the boots on the ground, Kurt is the eye in the sky, and Dave is the getaway driver. Scott enters the lab through the water main after Louise, who's posing as a security guard, lowers the water pressure in the pipe so that Scott can enter through the water main. Meanwhile, Hank tries to talk Cross out of selling the Yellow Jacket to Hydra, and he even punches Cross. Scott makes it into the vault and is stopped by Cross just before he tries to steal the Yellow Jacket suit. He then grows big, and a brawl ensues between Scott, Hope, and the buyers, one of which was a member of the Ten Rings terrorist network, the same terrorist network which captured Tony Stark in the first Iron Man movie and freed Trevor Slattery from prison in the Marvel one-shot All Hail the King. We will continue to see the Ten Rings throughout the MCU. Cross attempts to escape on a helicopter, and he is chased by Scott as he is flying with his army of ants. Scott makes it onto the helicopter as Ant-Man and tries to stop Cross, who puts on the Yellow Jacket suit, shrinks, and fights Scott inside of a briefcase. They even unintentionally play the song Disintegration by The Cure as the briefcase falls and ends up in someone's backyard pool, as they then become big again and take the fight over to Scott's daughter, Cassie's house. Meanwhile, Pym Technologies is blown up by the ants who were put in place by Scott. The ants also fried all of the servers at Pymtech. Scott saves his daughter by fighting the Yellow Jacket on Cassie's small Thomas the Train toy set, and they even end up expanding the toy train to the point that it leaves a hole in the roof of the house. Scott realizes that he cannot cut through the Yellow Jacket's armor since it's titanium, so he then goes subatomic into the quantum realm, causing the Yellow Jacket to essentially disintegrate, and he even loses an arm. Another nod to Empire Strikes Back. Every film in Phase 2 received someone getting an arm amputated. No. So every movie from Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers Age of Ultron, and finally Ant-Man. All the last 6 films, someone has lost a limb. Scott goes into the quantum realm as he hears the faint cries of his young daughter Cassie. This motivates him to use one of the blue expansion discs and place it inside of his regulator in order to expand and make it out of the quantum realm alive, something that has never been done before. The next day, Scott, along with his ex-wife, Maddie, her fiance Paxton, who's a cop, and their daughter Cassie, all have breakfast together and try to process what happened the night before. Scott meets up with Hank and Hope, and Hank realizes that it is possible for someone to make it out of the quantum realm, and that his wife Janet could still be alive and could possibly make it out of the quantum realm one day. Who knows? The film ends with Louise telling another one of his stories, which includes a Stan Lee cameo about how someone from the Avengers is looking for Scott, and we see that this person is none other than Sam Wilson, the Falcon. The film has one mid-credit scene which shows Hank revealing his prototype for the Wasp Mark II suit that he and his wife Janet were working on, but Janet never got to wear. Hank now realizes that they were building it for Hope all along. The post-credit scene is a scene from our next movie in which it is revealed that Captain America and Falcon finally found the Winter Soldier following the events of Captain America the Winter Soldier. Sam Wilson mentions that he knows someone who can help them with whatever their current situation is with the Winter Soldier. And that's pretty much all that happened in 2015's Ant-Man. The main theme of this movie is a passing of the torch. Hank realizes that his time spent as the Ant-Man has come to a close, and he now has a responsibility to choose a successor to carry on his legacy. His successor is Scott Lang, who becomes the second Ant-Man. We're going to see this theme of mentorship and passing the torch come up in future films. Like, so far, we've already seen it happen in Iron Man 3. We see Tony at the end of Iron Man 3, like, he blows up all of his suits, and then he gives technology to the kid Harvey. So, we're going to see this theme of like passing of the torch, and that for these superheroes, their time as heroes has both a dawn as well as a dusk. As far as the impact that this film has had on the MCU, it introduced us to Scott Lang as the Ant-Man, Hank Pym as a scientist and former S.H.I.E.L.D. researcher, and it, teased future films. The post-credit scene, we got a teaser for two future films that you will, I guess, realize once we watch those films and look back. I don't want to give away too much. Overall, I think this film was just a fun, superhero movie that, took us away from the big world of, Avengers and gods and Infinity Stones and aliens and androids, and kind of brought us back to Earth for once. Like, it's kind of a smaller solo film, smaller, standalone film. And yeah, it's like I said in previous episodes that the superhero genre is not a genre unto itself, and how, although Ant-Man is a superhero movie, it's more of a heist film. And I pointed out in a previous episode how, like, Captain America the First Avenger is like a period piece. It's a 1940s action film. Captain America the Winter Soldier, more of a political thriller. Guardians of the Galaxy, space opera. Ant-Man, heist film. But these are all superhero films. I personally enjoyed this film since it had the perfect balance of like humor, action, and like a well fleshed out story. I think this is kind of just a breath of fresh air after Avengers Age of Ultron, which a lot to process, and we're going to see the ramifications. Well, I'm actually getting ahead of myself. Overall, one good film, really good film, and a perfect conclusion to Phase 2. Let me know on social media what you guys thought of this film. The links to all of my social media are in the description. I'd really love to hear from you guys. All the links are down below. Our next film is Captain America Civil War. This film will see the Avengers divided over the Sokovia Accords, which is the UN's response to the various battles that the Avengers have participated in throughout the MCU thus far. So we're talking the Battle of New York, the Triskelion mess left behind in Washington, D.C., the Battle of Sokovia, which we saw in the last film, Avengers Age of Ultron, which was a disaster literally caused by the Avengers. And we're going to see one more disaster in Captain America Civil War that will be the final nail in the coffin for the Sokovia Accords. Because at this point, the Avengers have pretty much ignored sovereign borders and just kind of traveled around the world and just, taken down bad guys with no regard for what they've left behind. Even the Hulk's rampage through Johannesburg in Avengers Age of Ultron, like all the damage that was left behind. And, that's something the governments of the world can no longer tolerate. The film also introduces us to Daniel Bruhl as Baron Zemo, Tom Holland as Peter Parker / Spider-Man, the late Chadwick Boseman, God rest his soul, as Prince T'Challa / the Black Panther. For those who don't know, Chadwick Boseman, he died of, I think it was colon cancer, back in August of 2020. Tragic, and he was young. He was like early 40s. And also, we will see the return of the late William Hurt, who, for those of you who remember, he played Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross in The Incredible Hulk, the second film that we reviewed in our Infinity Saga. He returns, only now he is the Secretary of State. He's no longer in the Army. He's Secretary of State. So same actor, William Hurt, who actually died earlier this year. I think he died back in March. So if you like this episode, make sure that you share it with your friends and family. Give it a thumbs up. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because I post a new episode every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and you don't want to miss out. I will talk to all of you in the next episode. Peace.